Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Man in America. I'm your host, Seth Holhouse, coming to you live for a really, I would say, important show where we're going to be dissecting what's happening in Venezuela, but how it relates to a much larger battle for control, basically, of the whole world, right? It's who's going to be in control of the New World Order. And Venezuela and the situation happening in Venezuela helps us to better understand that in ways that it's difficult to sometimes portray. But tonight, in tonight's show, we're going to be going through a lot of details that will help with understanding that. So before we jump in, a few quick notes. First off, if you're watching on Rumble, make sure you hit that green follow button below to make sure you get the notifications with new shows. We're putting out 3, 4, 5, 6 shows a week, blasting out content, and it's only going to be increasing as we approach fall and election season and the probably chaos that we'll be having here soon. Also, we have a giveaway that we are doing, and the winner. So we have a winner we chosen tonight. Actually, I have to pull the name out. I think it was a Jim. I didn't have that readily available for you, but I believe it was Jim C. So, but either way, we've got a winner for tonight's show. What we're doing is every Friday we are giving out 5 ounces of pure silver. So literally 5 ounces of they're called it's a buffalo round. It's just a generic round. So we're giving away 5 ounces of free silver every single show on Fridays. So if you want to enter in the weekly drawing and you have a chance to win every Friday, go to maninamerica.com/win, which is the website you see right there. So maninamerica.com/win, enter in your name and your email, and you'll get a chance to win. And the great thing is once you enter once, you're put back in the drawing for every single show, every single Friday. So every Friday, you might have a chance of winning more than once even. You might win this week and maybe next week. You never know. Maybe you'll be lucky. So again, it's maninamerica.com/win. The other thing is that, so in tonight's show, we're going to be talking a lot about de-dollarization. And to understand the fight for the for control of the New World Order, you have to understand where de-dollarization comes into that. And we're talking a lot about it, but basically to give you the overall basic summary, the Western imperialist system, which has conquered a lot of the world, even though we have the United States, but if you're looking at this system, which I'll be detailing in great detail in today's show, the dollar has played a major role in allowing for the U.S. expansion, right? Talking about the military expansion, the coups all over the world. A lot of this is funded by the dollar. Now, the BRICS nations, they know this, and so they are pushing forward with this de-dollarization campaign. So what that means for us here in America is that they are working on stripping the power the US dollar has because we've used that US dollar as a weapon. Okay, so a lot of the inflation that we see, the prices going up, a lot of it is actually tied to de-dollarization, though they're not telling you that on mainstream media because the fiat currency that we know as the US dollar for us, which is tied into the Federal Reserve, which actually isn't federal. It's basically a private bank owned by the rich banking families and the big American banks. This is their system of printing and printing and printing. And that's how they've been able to fund these endless wars and everything. But that's coming to an end. And the de-dollarization is accelerating that. So in terms of, I was just talking about silver, giving away free silver. This is where you want to be, folks. If you've got a lot of money sitting in IRAs, 401ks, even the stock market, you watched what happened in the stock market just today. I think it's just a small indicator of what's to come in the coming months because this overprinting of money has propped up the stock market and the reality, the rug is getting ready to be pulled, right? So what we're looking at is, I think cataclysmic in terms of the markets. And I'm not trying to be a fearmonger, but that's just what you see coming, right? If you keep blowing a balloon up and blowing it and blowing it and blowing it, eventually it pops. And that's what we're approaching. So if you have money sitting in places like 401k, even your banking or savings account, I highly recommend putting at least some of that money into precious metals. So precious metals, they've been around for thousands of years. They've survived the rise and fall of empires, the collapse of civilizations, the collapse of currencies. And if you're interested in checking this out, so you are probably very aware, have worked with Kirk Elliott for quite some time, and great company, fantastic guy, Kirk Elliott. However, I first started my career as a podcaster with great support from Noble Gold. And I've kept in touch with the CEO of Noble Gold, and they've got some really incredible initiatives they're doing, especially around education and whatnot. So I've actually gone back to working with Noble Gold now. Nothing wrong with Kirk Elliott, amazing, honest Christian patriot, but Noble Gold has some things I'm really excited about. So If you go to the website goldwithseth.com, let me pull it up for you here. So goldwithseth.com will take you here. One thing that Noble Gold is doing is they have this free investment guide that they're giving away. So goldwithseth.com, fill out the form, or you can call 626-654-1906. So again, 626-654-1906. Contact Noble Gold. They've got an amazing team based in the United States. They will walk you through the entire process. And when it comes to, honestly, the IRA process, they are the best in the industry. They've really honed in on how to make that process so simple of switching, taking your IRA, your 401k, putting it into precious metals, avoiding the taxes and fees, etc. So again, goldwithseth.com or 626-654-1906. All right, folks, let's go ahead and jump into tonight's show. We have a lot to go over. So first off, I covered this topic a couple of days ago. I was covering what was happening in Venezuela, and I went deep into elections, and I talked about Dominion and Smartmatic and how it played, a role. And the perspective and the lens I was looking at it was that basically that Maduro is he's a dictator, right? Look at Chavez, Maduro, Castro, right? I'm not in any way praising them by having a different narrative other than the narrative that they're basically being voted out by their own people, and they're trying to steal the elections to maintain power. But I looked at this so I did a show basically looking at, okay, is Maduro, have they used this technology, the same stuff we saw happen here in 2020, to secure his seat at the table, to make sure that he stays in power? And I still actually believe that that's true. Now, in that show, though, I didn't go into the aspect of, is this a CIA coup? Because at that point with the research I've done, I hadn't come across that yet in my research. And so, I'm a ever evolving person in my understanding, and the reason why I wanted to do this show is because my understanding of what's happening in Venezuela has greatly expanded and shifted since that show a couple of days ago. And that's no small part to the comments and information that you all have shared with me. So the comments in Telegram and Twitter, you've actually helped point me in a lot of different directions, which has been very helpful. So I've now done a ton of research, and what I've put together for today's show, I think, is going to really put a lot of pieces together for you. It's going to help you make sense of a lot of what's happening, because if you see what's happening in Venezuela, it's so much bigger than that, right? I think that Venezuela is this little surface manifestation of this battle going on between the BRICS nations, China specifically, the CCP-led BRICS nations, and this Western system, right? The Western, world order that is really falling. It's collapsing at this stage. And so I'm first going to be diving into the discussion about CIA's potential involvement in what's happened with the elections in Venezuela, Maduro's response, and some other information surrounding that. So first off, I want to read. So Maduro, he gave this about 2 or 3 days ago. He gave a speech talking about what he saw happening in his country. And I'm going to read a little bit of this. Now, I want to say, actually, I'll take a quick step back before I jump into that, and just say that when we're looking at understanding what's happening in the world, I think that for a lot of us, especially in America, you go to the movie theater, it's always good guy versus bad guy. Everything's black and white, right? This is Edward Bernays propaganda given 2 choices. It's Coke or Pepsi. It's black or white. It's left or right, right? Everything is broken down into 2 choices. And what we're taught to believe is that if one choice is good or perceived to be good, then the other choice is definitely bad. But that's not the case, especially when you're trying to understand this fight for the new world order, right? Because when we look at what's happening, I'm sure that if you're watching this show, you've come to a similar conclusion as I have, that there are these bad people, elites, cabal, whatever you want to call them, deep state, that want to gain control of a new world order. They want to collapse America, get rid of America, so that they can basically unite the entire world under one government, one religion, one army, etc. And as you try to understand that, when you're researching, it seems like this whole thing is a pyramid, right? It seems like that as you trace it up, there's a small group at the very, very top that controls everything. But a lot of my research has shown me that there's actually factions, right? We talk about the cabal. Well, there's multiple cabals, and that's my understanding of it. There's multiple cabal factions that are fighting for control over the new world order. Now, what sucks is that priority number one for any cabal fighting for the New World Order is to get rid of the United States of America, right? And that's what makes it feel like that we're up against one giant enemy, is because from my understanding, we're up against multiple enemies that are fighting among themselves for control over the entire world, but their top priority is collectively to get rid of America, which is why it seems like we're getting attacked from all angles. And so if you look at, so going back into the whole dialectical approach of like, okay, two choices, it's either A or B. So by me saying that, look, what's happening in Venezuela may in fact be a CIA-led coup, color revolution, etc., and painting the CIA in a bad light, which I think that it's absolutely very corrupt, and we're going to be getting into that. The coups, it's kind of orchestrated all over the world, etc. But I'm not saying that because the CIA and these coups are bad and evil and whatnot, that Maduro is good, right? It's almost like saying that, well, if you think that America's government and the deep state is evil and it's doing bad things, that if it's up against China or the CCP, that China or the CCP is therefore good. I'm not implying that, actually, because I think that both systems are actually very bad. And to be honest, if there's one system that I fear worse than the system that I live within, which is this American-led, Western-led, imperialistic system that's conquered so much of the world, I'm actually more concerned about living under a world controlled by the BRICS, right? Now, you might say, hey, hold on, like the BRICS are saving us, they're fighting against the deep state. Well, to understand BRICS, you have to understand the CCP, which is at the center of the BRICS nations, is the Chinese Communist Party. And you look at what they're doing to their own citizens, right? As bad as we think it is here in America. And yes, there's absolutely corruption. There's a deep state. They just tried killing our, Donald Trump, et cetera. If you look at what's happening in China, okay, they have state-run hospitals for harvesting organs of their own citizens. All right, so as much as people complain about the deep state and they complain about life in America, it's like, I don't want to hear it. Take a look at what China's doing to their own people. Like they've rounded up millions of people, whether the Uyghur Muslims or whether the Falun Gong or the underground Christians, and they're putting them in state-run hospitals and selling their organs internationally. And some people will say, okay, what's up with the Uyghur Muslims? I didn't know there's all these Muslims in China, and why are they the ones in the camps and the prisons? And it's like, oh, well, it just so happens that the Muslims and the wealth in the Middle East, and I interviewed a surgeon that defected from China that was forced to do live organ harvesting from political prisoners in China that revealed this to me. This is probably 3 or 4 years ago. And he said, Seth, he goes, why do you think all these Uyghur Muslims are in these camps and why they control the population so much? He goes, well, one of the big reasons is because you have all these wealthy Middle Easterners that they want Muslim organs, right? They want halal organs. And so you have all this money from the Middle East that is flowing into China where they're buying the Muslim organs from the prisoners that they're executing for their organs. So, and this is state run, folks. It's not some like, kind of side agency that is operating, and it's kind of outside the rule of law. I mean, no, this is a state run thing that's happening in communist China, right? They're literally killing people via cutting out their organs to sell to the international market. So that's important to understand, that by saying that, that there's evil within our own government and we're up against the BRICS, I'm not saying that these BRICS nations are something we should be celebrating, or we should be like hoping for the BRICS nations to take down the new world order, take down this Western, world order, because even though right now it seems like there's some good things that are happening over there, okay, like Putin saying some nice, some things that really click with us, right? Talking about the satanic agenda in the West, et cetera. At the seat of the table of the BRICS is the Chinese Communist Party. So we have to be wary of that. So I'll get into that later in the show when I start talking more about BRICS, de-dollarization, et cetera. All right, so I want to talk about this speech, though, from Maduro, because this really helps understand. So Maduro, he gave a speech a couple of days ago. And it's funny, though, because you can't find the speech anywhere online. You can find a few videos of it, and maybe because I'm searching in English and it hasn't been translated very much, but it's very difficult to find. It's almost like it's being covered up. So what Maduro said here, he said, the North Americans put a smile on their diplomatic face of deception, but behind they carry a dagger. And if you believe their smile, if you get careless, they turn around and stab you. So they have acted for almost 200 years, assassinating presidents, assassinating leaders in the world, assassinating presidents in the USA. John F. Kennedy, who killed him, the system, it's proven. They created what is now known as a false positive with a man named Oswald. This is well known and well denounced in a documentary film called JFK, well documented. Kennedy was killed by the criminal mafia in Miami and by the CIA because he was working to end the Vietnam War and to reach an understanding with Cuba and end the blockade and aggression against Cuba. And he says a few more things about that, but then he continues here on the bottom, which I want to talk. He says, we recently, actually, sorry, going back to the CIA, he's talking about them saying it has a long history of assassinations, coups around the world, and a lot of money involved. We recently condemned the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. And there's a lot of questions from those who are protecting Donald Trump. Why'd they allow the shooter to stand there? There are many doubts that have been expressed in the U.S., how they're trying to cover that up. So that empire, accustomed to violence, coup d'etats, it prepared a scenario against Venezuela. So here you have Maduro accusing the United States government, CIA, etc., of basically launching a coup d'etat, a color revolution in Venezuela, right, through what we see happening now, trying to create and facilitate a civil war. Now, in the show I did the other day, I showed some videos of even some of the major gangs in in Venezuela that were saying, look, they're going to start turning on Maduro. And it seemed like, okay, hey, maybe they're protecting we the people of Venezuela, et cetera. But it could also be that they are being manipulated and controlled by the CIA, right? The CIA, they have their hands in all kinds of stuff like this around the world. So that also might make sense. So you have Maduro that's openly saying that, hey, I won the election and it's the CIA and a color revolution and their coup d'etat trying to overthrow the government here. Now, one thing I will say, though, is even though I believe actually there's a lot of truth to that, I also believe that there's a good chance he didn't actually win the election. So I believe that there's a good chance that he did fudge the numbers and he used, these voting machines and technology to change the results of the election. But that, of course, he's not going to admit that. He's still going to blame the whole thing on the CIA. And the fact is, the CIA may actually be involved, right? And I've got some stuff to show you that points to the fact that's probably true. But I don't want to take this away from the fact, though, that there's the people that you see out protesting, even though they may have been egged on by CIA assets within Venezuela. They are, I stand with these people because they are trying to cast off this totalitarian, dictatorship, which is really what it is. I mean, if you look at the state of things in Venezuela, now granted that Maduro or Chavez, they would have blamed all the problems of Venezuela on the West. They would have said it's the sanctions, et cetera. And of course, that's true to a certain degree. But if you look at the oil, for instance, like in the 70s, when the Venezuelan government seized control of the oil operations, mismanaged it, you took one of the wealthiest nations in the world and turned it into almost a third world country. That wasn't necessarily the USA's fault, right? We also know how communism works. So when the state seizes control of businesses, it seizes control of natural resources, it oftentimes gets extremely mismanaged and the country ends up falling into the chaos that we currently see in Venezuela. So let's take a look at some other evidence that might point to the fact that this might well have been a CIA-backed coup in Venezuela. So I've got here another website to show you. So here we go. U.S. government-linked firm is source of exit poll claiming the Venezuelan opposition won the election. So this, and if you dive into this, you can see this is actually true. So it says Venezuelans' opposition in U.S. media outlets claim there was fraud in the July 28th election based on an exit poll done by U.S. government-linked firm Edison Research, who works with CIA-linked U.S. state propaganda organs and was active in Ukraine, Georgia, and Iraq. Right? So we know that the CIA has been involved in multiple color revolutions and coups around the world. This isn't new. Okay, so this is one thing, and there's more information that comes out about this. I know WikiLeaks exposed some of this on Twitter, but this is just kind of saying, okay, yes, so this is one aspect of showing the involvement. Okay, let's look back in history though. It's like, okay, well, has the CIA ever been involved in an attempted coup in Venezuela before? I don't know, maybe. Well, okay, here. So in 2020, now this is an interesting story. So an ex-Green Beret led a failed attempt to oust Venezuela's Maduro. This is the guy right here, Oliver Acala Cordones. No, I'm not sure if that one's him. Yes. No, sorry, he's one of the ringleaders they're trying to go after. Anyway, so the point here with this is that basically this ex-Green Beret, was caught trying to overthrow Maduro. Now, what's interesting is if you research into it, you can't really figure out what his motives were. I mean, it's kind of like this is when Trump was in office, and so there's some motive it paints that he was trying to say like impress Trump or help Trump, but then Trump's never talked about it. They never acknowledged any involvement for it. They can't figure out where this guy got his funding from. Like it was a very expensive operation, millions of dollars, but they can't figure out where he got his funding from. There were other people saying that there were CIA assets involved in it. So to me, when you look at this whole picture, it's some sort of, also this guy's like highly trained special forces. So when you have this, like this is in a lot of ways how the CIA operates, right? This military industrial complex, these black budgets. What you have happening is a lot of times you have people that are special forces, they're elite mercenaries and killers, right? They're trained to be, whether you're a Navy SEAL, Army Ranger, Green Beret, they are trained to be elite killers and assassins because that's what they do, right? Now, what happens though is a lot of times after they leave, after they finish their duty and they finish serving, it's like, okay, what are they going to do now? And so there's a lot of companies, a lot of security companies and whatever that end up bringing them on, or they start their own companies and they get involved in black budget military operations. So basically meaning that it's like, so how does the government, the U.S. government, how do they topple a regime or assassinate a president without getting approval from Congress, et cetera? Well, it's done through these black budgets, which are, these paid mercenaries that oftentimes are ex-military. So to me, this story that the picture they're painting here, it makes me think that this was some sort of CIA operation to probably assassinate Maduro and do a regime change and put their person in charge there. So I also want to bring up this. So, John Bolton, Mr. John Bolton, this is an interview that he did back in 2022. Now, I want you to listen to what he says about Venezuela and about coups, because I feel like that he didn't intend to reveal this, but as part of the conversation he did, and he kind of showed the hand. So I'll play this for you. It's 41 seconds long.
I don't know that I agree with you. To be fair, with all due respect, one doesn't have to be brilliant to attempt a coup.
I disagree with that. As somebody who has helped plan coup d'etat,
Yeah.
not here, but other places, it takes a lot of work, and that's not what he did.
When we were talking about what is capable, what you need to do to be able to plan a coup, and you cited your expertise having planned coups.
I'm not going to get into the specifics, but
successful coups?
Well, I wrote about Venezuela in the book, and it turned out not to be successful. Not that we had all that much to do with it, but I saw.
So he's like, okay, we've planned coups. I wrote about Venezuela in my book. It was not successful, but we didn't have much to do with it, right? So again, I mean, you can see that the people in our government, the deep state actors, as you might call them, the CIA, the agencies, they've been involved in coups. So if you look at this, and some people might look at Maduro's speech and say, okay, look, he's blaming it all on the West, and he's making this stuff up and whatever. But then when you see John Bolton talking about how they've tried coups in Venezuela before, and then if you look into the history of the CIA and you look at what they've done, and you start looking at Benghazi and all the stuff that our government's done, you're like, well, it actually makes sense what Maduro's saying, and I don't necessarily trust him fully because he is a kind of a dictator and he's very pro-communist, but he's making some valid points there. Okay, so and if you want to really understand this, highly recommend reading this book. So this is a book written by John Perkins. I've interviewed him before. One of my favorite books, actually. If you want to understand what's really behind global geopolitics, read this book. He has an updated version of it too. This is the New Confessions, and he might even have a more updated. I forget what the timeline of his books are, but if you're not familiar with this, so John Perkins was what you'd consider an economic hitman. So he was somebody that was working on behalf of the U.S. government, but he was not officially part of the U.S. government, as I talked about with what they do with the black ops and et cetera. It's not technically part of the U.S. government, but his job was to go into countries and basically use these loans to enslave these countries to seize control of their natural resources. So Ecuador, for instance, or Panama. So what someone like what John Perkins would do, he was the economic hitman. He'd go in, he'd meet with the presidents of, say, Panama or Ecuador or any number of countries, and he would come and say, hey, look, what we're going to do, we're going to give you funding from USAID or funding from the IMF, and we're going to build all these power plants. We're going to build this infrastructure in your country to help really bring you to the 21st century, right? We're going to take you from a second world or a third world country to a first world country. He makes all these promises knowing those promises will never be met, because what happens is the countries are forced to then give collateral for this loan, but the collateral is oil, military bases, natural resources, rainforests, land, key parts of their own government. It's right. And their government's assets are the collateral. Now, John Perkins knows, as he openly admits in the book and in the interview, he knows that the loan will never be able to be paid back in full, because what they're going to be doing to the country to improve it will never be successful enough to make it so that what he's promising will be able to be actually, they'll be able to reap what they're trying to sow. So what ends up happening is that they make all these promises. Now, the leader of the country knows they know the situation. But what they do in this process is they give all these kickbacks, hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars go to the leaders of these countries, their families, et cetera, in exchange for selling out their own people. Now, what John Perkins says, though, is if that leader, say he really cares about his people, say he's a good leader, and he had a couple of friends. I think it was the president of Ecuador and the president of Panama became good friends with John Perkins. And so, but they didn't want to sell out their people. And so what happens, though, is that how John Perkins explains it is that if these leaders don't sign up for these loans and don't sign up to this knowingly entering into a debt slavery contract, then if John can't convince them to sign up, then he's failed at his job. But then the next step is what John says is they send in, quote, the CIA jackals. So he says that if he can't convince them, then they send in the CIA jackals that assassinate the president, and they put a leader in place who will then basically abide by the rules that the U.S. wants, right? The next leader will certainly sign those deals, okay? So John Perkins in that book, he talks about the president of Ecuador and the president of Panama were both actually good friends of his. He really cared about them. They were both assassinated by the CIA. And he details it in the books. They both had their small planes blown up. So there's a long history of this happening. So this isn't something new. So the idea that this could be happening in Venezuela there's actually quite plausible. So it makes you wonder, though. It's like, okay, so what is it about Venezuela that our government would be wanting, right? What resources do they have? Well, let's take a look, just out of curiosity, at the top oil reserves by country. Oh, wow. It just so happens that Venezuela, this is looking at, in 2016, but it's probably still pretty accurate, that Venezuela just so happens to be the top producing oil country in the world. So you'd imagine that if the United States controlled the oil in Venezuela, which they absolutely want to, well, I think we have all these deals with the Middle East that we've made, the Bretton Woods Agreement, et cetera, that really took our dollar to where it is today, through the as the reserve currency, right? So you can see that Venezuela is one of those countries that if you're trying to controlling the globe, you get to control the resources. So you want control over Venezuela, right? They are the top producing oil country. So now it's insane that the country is so poor, right? It's insane that they've got hyperinflation. That is what it is. I mean, they should be one of the wealthiest nations on earth. I mean, compare Venezuela and go look at Dubai, right? Or areas over in the Middle East. I mean, Saudi Arabia. Like Venezuela should be the country where you see all these people driving around Bugattis and Rolls Royce and Maybachs, and you should see that in Venezuela. But instead, people are pushing wheelbarrows full of cash to go buy some chicken at the market because it's been so mismanaged. Now, granted, one of the reasons I'm not going to discount the fact that there's been a lot of interference and sanctions from the U.S. government, but it's also because it's under a socialist, system. So you look at Dubai or the Middle East, like, yeah, they're not socialist and communist. Like they're making tons of money and they're doing it right. So again, if you look at this and you acknowledge it's like, oh, okay, so yeah, Venezuela has all this oil, so it makes sense that this is the country that they're after. So, but to take a look at, okay, so to understand what's really happening from the big picture, though, we have to start scaling back in this battle. So if America is fighting for control over Venezuela, not just America, it's really, it's like this Western system. So it's, it's America, it's the crown, it's Israel, it's NATO, right? It's the military industrial complex. Like it's this entire Western order that is trying to basically to take control over the entire world, right? This is that they are, going into, especially as you get into the European bankers, which are backing a lot of this, you get into the UN, they are trying to implement this system that will basically bring about this new world order that they can control. Now, but the problem though, is that there is this competing cabal, which is, on the surface, it's the BRICS nations. Okay. So, and what you have happening at the center of this battle is de-dollarization. And I talked about this a little bit in the beginning. This is one of the reasons why I'm so strong on precious metals, because our dollar is absolutely under attack. Because I'm trying to fit a lot into one episode, right? There's a lot of information, but the dollar and the ability for us to print the dollar, right, it's what's funded all of these wars around the world. It's what's funded us, it's funded all the coups. It's funded these operations. It's the fact that we can just keep printing money, right? And you look at the debt right now is at $35 trillion, but they don't care. They keep printing and printing and printing because they know it's going to come to an end. Now, when it comes to an end, I think they're going to try to bring in a central bank digital currency, which is a much bigger issue. But anyway, the dollar as a currency, it's really like, it's like they've squeezed every last drop out of the lemon, and it's almost dead, right? And this is why I'm a big person for gold and silver, because when that dollar truly dies, I mean, it's not good, right? It's hyperinflation. So the death of a currency is hyperinflation. And I genuinely believe that is where the US dollar is headed. So, but this de-dollarization campaign is led by these BRICS nations, so it's really at the center, though. You have the Chinese Communist Party, you have Russia, right? And Biden made a major mistake when he put the economic sanctions on Russia, and specifically when he weaponized the SWIFT system against Russia, basically kicking Russia out of the SWIFT system, which is the system for international settlements of money. So basically what happened, especially, and this is really kicked off when the Ukraine war started, is that the whole world saw that the U.S. would use its dollar, right? Even though it's the world reserve currency, that the dollar would become a weapon. And that by Biden, the actions that he did showed the world that the United States is willing to use the US dollar as a weapon to punish its political enemies. And so that kicked off in a major way, even more so, this de-dollarization campaign, because they know it's almost like the dollar is this magic treasure that the Western system has, right? The Western cabal has this dollar, and it's like the golden goose, right? It keeps laying golden eggs, and we're using those golden eggs to fund this massive expansion around the world to try to seize control of the whole world. Now, we've used that as a weapon against the countries that we don't agree with, right? So the sanctions placed on Venezuela, the sanctions placed on Russia, sanctions placed on the China and the CCP. So this is at the center of this battle for world control is the role of the dollar. And so they are actively working on this de-dollarization campaign. So I'll read a little bit from this article here. It's saying de-dollarization shifting the power between the U.S. and BRICS. It says, will a new global reserve currency threaten the greenback's supremacy? The short answer is yes. It says there's been increasing talk of the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, developing a new currency that will rival the US dollar as the global reserve standard. This month, the leaders of the BRICS met in South Africa for further discussions on the matter. Growing pressure for a new global currency comes after the continued weaponization of the US dollar in the form of sanctions and trade wars. Many countries are seeking greater independence from the US financial system. But what makes the dollar, what makes the U.S. dollar today's world reserve currency? And it goes into the Bretton Woods Agreement, right? How following in the Second World War, the Allies gathered at Bretton Woods and anointed the U.S. dollar as the world's principal reserve currency. It was pegged against gold at an exchangeable rate of $35 an ounce. However, in 1971, that's when Nixon pulled it off the gold standard, that's when, a lot of the hyperinflation we're seeing now, it's like you uncouple it from gold. And it's like, okay, we're going to print it as much as we can, right? So it's been used and weaponized, but that is truly, it is coming to an end, right? You can only print, fiat currency, right? Fiat currency, it's a currency that's not backed by anything. They can be printed unlimited. Fiat currencies, they have a life cycle. They don't last forever, because what happens is eventually, especially when a fiat currency is the world reserve currency, you have to keep printing and printing and printing. And how, I'm not going to get into a financial lesson here, economics, but basically it has a timeline. And the more you print and keep printing, the more it accelerates. Okay. So to understand what's happening in Venezuela, it's important to look at this bigger picture war over these two cabals, right? The Western system and the BRICS system. So continuing though, okay, so Venezuela, it's like, okay, let's look at what is Venezuela's role in BRICS, because this is absolutely significant, right? So we have Milei in Argentina, which is a very similar country to Venezuela, and we're going to be talking about their relationship with BRICS and their relationship with the West. Okay, but if we're looking at Venezuela, so here's an article. This is from June 21st. This is only a couple of weeks ago, or about a month ago, actually 6 weeks ago. And as of this point, is saying Venezuela is about to join the BRICS. So again, think about this. If you're the United States and you have been trying to overthrow the government in Venezuela, through coups and sanctions and various means, because you want to then put your person in charge that gives you access to the oil in that country. And on top of a lot of other, there's gold, there's oil, there's gas, there's a lot, Venezuela is an extremely rich in natural resources country. So if you're seeing this in the United States, and when I say United States, it's this Western system. It's the U.S. It's the Crown. It's Israel. These countries that are working for this Western global hegemony. Basically, if you see that Venezuela, and they would know in far in advance, but if you know that Venezuela is on the verge of joining the BRICS, right? You see, okay, crap, Venezuela is getting ready to officially join the competing system that's fighting for control over the world. That's not good. Okay, so here, this is June 21st. It says, in this new world, okay, look at the quotes that they use. In this new world, Venezuela is at the doorstep of joining the BRICS group of nations with its resources. This guy is the spokesperson, this guy Rodriguez, saying that the country had the world's largest fuel deposits. With daily production of 3 million barrels of oil, our reserves will be enough for almost 3 centuries. Actually, it's a female. So it says, in her words, Venezuela also has the world's 4th largest natural gas reserves, which are now in the process of certification. Moreover, the country has deposits of iron ore, coal, gold, and diamonds. And here it says, look, here we go. Like, here's your quote, folks. Like, if you want to call me a conspiracy theorist, we're talking about the New World Order, here you go. The turning point of the New World Order's creation has arrived, and we want to see Venezuela becoming a part of the new geopolitical reality. So, folks, this is it right here. There's a global battle between multiple cabals fighting for control over the world. And it's the BRICS nations up against the United States and the Western nations. And they're fighting for control over the new world order. Okay, here's the quote right here again. Now, this woman, actually, I'll tell you who she is so you know, okay? So this is the BRICS executive vice president, Delcy Rodriguez. Okay. Oh, sorry, no, she's the executive vice president of Venezuela. So it says Venezuela is at the doorstep of joining the BRICS groups of nations and ready to offer its fuel and mineral resources to future partners. The country's executive vice president, Delcy Rodriguez, said. Again, executive vice president of Venezuela is saying the turning point of the new world order creation has arrived, and we want to see Venezuela becoming part of the new geopolitical reality. So we've also recently, again, look at the timing of this. This is June 18th, 2024. So this is, again, a little over a month ago, and, shortly before the elections we're going to be coming up in Venezuela. Here, Venezuela announces investments from BRICS countries, invites bloc to accompany July 28th election. So officials reiterated the country's intention to join BRICS and called on members of the 20-country bloc to witness the upcoming election. Okay, so here, Mexico City, it's where it's reported. So Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro announced that the country had secured investments from numerous countries from the BRICS bloc, likewise opening the potential for new markets for Venezuelan goods. Okay. It says the Venezuelan president broke the news in a meeting with a steel company. He says, I've already achieved sufficient investments to make the company more powerful and consolidate with more strength from now on. Okay, so it continues with more information about that. But basically here he's talking about, okay, he's comparing the two systems. He's saying, here there are two visions, two models, ours of sovereignty and productive recovery, and theirs, which is all about looting and privatizing, which I can't say I disagree with his statement there, right? So he's saying Venezuela aspires to become a full member of the BRICS Plus this year. Our country has a set of potentials to contribute as a member of the BRICS in the immediate future. And if you look into this and you do enough research, what you find is that it's very common for them to talk about the New World Order, right? So they're all on the same page. Like, they know they're fighting for the New World Order. So now, where does China fit in this? Because at the center of BRICS is the Chinese Communist Party, right? I would say our biggest competitor, the biggest competitor to America, is the CCP. Okay, so here we go. This is a recent article. This is just from August 2nd. This is from today. So how China breaks with Latin America and BRICS allies over Venezuela election fraud. So China's unquestioning support of the Maduro government in Venezuela is out of step with its ambitions like the rest of Latin America. So what we have here, and I'll read a little bit of this article for you, it says, within minutes of the Maduro government declaring victory in the July 28th Venezuelan elections, China congratulated him on his successful re-election and for the smooth presidential election. China rushed into its verdict, even though, according to the government, only 80% of the results had been reported, meaning at least 2 million more votes were yet to be counted. So here you see, okay, what's happening? Okay, you see you have this election happening in Venezuela, which, and if you look at the opposition, I'm not going to be diving into the opposition that was up against Maduro, but you can see that there's actually very close ties with this Western system. Okay, so you look at this election happening in Venezuela, and we're at the stage where the next couple of years, the battle between the BRICS nations and this Western system is going to be absolutely increasing, and a lot of it's going to be a battle over resources. So Venezuela is a key chess player. It's a key piece of land in this global battle. And so if you look at what just happened in this election, it tells you everything you need to know about this global battle. How the election happens, almost instantly you have China coming out saying, hey, congratulations, Maduro. Great, you won. You're in. We're supporting you. We're excited for you to join BRICS. But you also have at the same time, people like Anthony Blinken, for instance, coming out and issuing an official statement saying that we recognize the opposition leader, right? So you have okay, so we know that our own government doesn't, look at what happened in 2020, and I'm on YouTube, so I'll be careful with my words here, which is why you should be watching on Rumble if you're not watching on Rumble. But look at our own government, look at our own media, how they treated what happened in 2020. It's obvious they could care. They don't give a crap about election integrity. They only do when it serves their needs. And so when all of a sudden you have the mainstream media, New York Times, Blinken, et cetera, all coming out and saying, hey, whoa, there's election fraud in Venezuela. It's like, oh, wait, you care about elections all of a sudden? Is that what's new? Like, wow, this is kind of cool. You care about the integrity of elections. Great. Let's see what happens in a couple of months here in the United States. But you have that happen at the exact same time that China and the CCP has come out and said the exact opposite. So you can see that the battle going on right now in Venezuela is not about whether the people in Venezuela can cast off this system, this socialist system. It's Venezuela is a pawn in this global war, right? For global dominance and who's going to control the New World Order. And you've got the West fighting with the East, and it's a tug of war over who's going to gain control over the oil reserves and the natural resource reserves of Venezuela. That's as simple as it is. I mean, it's really complicated when you dive into the details of it. When you take a 10,000 or 100,000 foot view, it's actually really, really simple. Now, again, let's take another look at what China has been doing. So here's another article. This is back in July of this year. China, a silent ally protecting Venezuela's Maduro, says the unconditional political, diplomatic, and economic support offered by Beijing has been key to keeping the Bavarian regime Bolivarian regime in power from Chavez to Maduro. So this is talking about, again, how China, here you have, right in this picture, sorry, the website kind of sucks, but you have Maduro meeting with Xi Jinping, right, at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing. And that was back in 2015. This is a long-term relationship. But again, this shows that China is viewing Venezuela as a key ally. Now, if you remember the show that I did the other day, we talked about that one voting company that starts with a D and ends with a minion, okay, that we've talked about quite a bit before. And I showed you a map, this kind of brain map of all the connections of what's connecting to that software specifically. But when you zoom out, the number one key of any entity that had relationship and had influence over that software system is China and the CCP. So you can see that the Venezuela is a key region because also, and I won't get into too much detail here, I think the CCP, through their relationship with Venezuela and through the voting software that had it start through Venezuela as it tied into Chavez, and there's a whistleblower that came out that was one of Chavez's right-hand men that talked about the development of this voting software to be using to basically control and pick leaders around the world. So you see China, so Venezuela is not just key because of the oil, it's also key because it's the heart of this software, right? Where they can basically pick which people they want to be in charge of over the world. So again, another reason why there's this tug of war happening for Venezuela. Now, what's interesting is that if you look at Milei, okay, and this is, so you have Javier Milei, right, of Argentina, who in a lot of ways, we people have called him the South American Donald Trump. He's very pro-freedom. There's a lot of good things about this guy, but when you take a step back and you look at it, what you see is that he's aligning himself with the Western system, right? So he's basically said, hey, I'm going to be part of the Western cabal. Basically, that's what you see happening. So what's interesting, though, is that after the election in Venezuela, that Milei has come out and had very strong words against Maduro. I mean, he's been one of the most outspoken political leaders in the entire world about what's happening here. So let's go and take a look here. This is an article that's on Fox News. I'm going to get a drink real quick. Sorry, folks. There's a lot to cram in this one episode. I could do probably 5 shows about this, okay? Okay, so Maduro bows to pressure for judicial audit of election results as Argentina's Milei encourages protests. So Milei is he's playing the exact same role as the U.S., only he's even way more vocal about it, encouraging protests, saying, look, there's no way that you won. I want to see an audit of the election results, which again, we know what audits, it's it doesn't matter who does what the audit is. It's who's doing the audit, right? So is an independent firm going to come in, an international independent firm, right? So what's he expecting? Maduro to say, okay, yeah, I'll have my audit department do an audit and we'll give the results on Monday. Okay. So the article here you have says, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has bowed to pressure from protesters in neighboring countries alike and called for an audit of the recent presidential election while continuing to verbally spar with rival leaders such as Argentina's Javier Milei. So Milei said the fraud carried out and perpetrated by the dictator Nicolas Maduro is nothing less than a Pyrrhic victory. He said on a video posted on TikTok, he said he may believe he has won a battle. However, the most important thing is that the Venezuelan lions have awakened and sooner or later socialism will come to an end. Now, again, I think it's great. I want all socialism and all communism to come to an end. But if we think that Milei is saying this because he just loves freedom and wants to get rid of socialism, just purely from that, I'm not sure if we can take it as something that simple, because what you see is that Milei has aligned himself with this Western system, right? You've got pictures of him over in Israel, wearing the yarmulke, kissing the wall. You've got him, actually, I'll pull up another thing right here. Well, I'll get to another thing, but you've got all these instances of him basically showing his allegiance to the West and rejecting the BRICS. So case in point, okay, here we go. Okay, imagine that. This is December 29th, 2023. Argentina won't join BRICS alliance in Milei's latest policy shift, right? So I think that it looked like that Argentina was going to join it. Milei gets in. He's like, you know what? Nope, screw the BRICS. I'm not joining the BRICS. Again, another instance of him saying, look, he's aligning himself with the Western-led order. Okay, I'm not going to read anything about that, but you can see. Okay, Argentina won't join BRICS alliance in his latest policy shift. Now, continuing here, so this is where it gets kind of interesting as we get into this look at the gold. And I will say quickly before I'll take a quick break just to say something, because I've just been going and nonstop. If you're still watching this show, I see I've got thousands of people watching online right now live. One thing I ask is if you're enjoying this content, A, make sure you subscribe. So make sure you hit that green follow button. But B, help me share this content. Like that, it's such a big help that when you, the listener and the watcher of this, when you're watching, if you like what I'm doing, if you're like, hey, great, this Seth guy, if you're new to the channel, welcome. Thank you. I hope you stick around for the future shows. But if you like what I'm doing, the biggest thing you can do to help is actually to share the content. And, so if you've got friends, you've been talking and trying to figure out, okay, hey, what's going on in Argentina? And is it a CIA coup and whatnot? And this is helping to, create some clarity for you. This research is beneficial. Help me by sharing the content, whether you email it to your friend or text it to your mom or whatever it is. I would really, really appreciate that. Honestly, I really would. So continuing, this is where it gets spicy. Okay. So this is a post from this Anya Parampil. I'm sorry, Anya, if I mispronounced your name. Now she's saying Maduro in Venezuela asks to repatriate sovereign gold holdings from the Bank of England, faces an assassination attempt, coups and attacks from Elon and his media minions. Milei in Argentina secretly moves sovereign gold holdings abroad, is BFFs with Elon, Shapiro, and Barry Weiss. This is interesting. Again, this shows you that Milei and Maduro are both very similar positions, geopolitically, but they're aligning themselves with the different competing orders. So here, this is an article from 2018, says that Venezuela seeks to repatriate nearly $500 million worth of gold from Britain. So as I told you, that if you look at the alignment of the Western-led system, it's the Crown, it's the European bankers, it's the military-industrial complex of the United States, it's Israel, it's the BRICS nations, right? Sorry, not BRICS, it is the NATO nations. This is the alliance, right? This is absolutely the alliance. So, back in 2018, Venezuela seeking to repatriate, almost $500 million, a little more than $500 million worth of gold from Britain. That's a big deal. Like that's a big FU to the Crown saying, I want my gold back. I don't trust you. Now, what's also interesting is that this other picture here, okay, I'll make it a little bigger for you. Let's see if I can zoom in. Okay, so that the mystery of Argentina's gold, how Milei admits that it was transferred abroad without specifying the quantities or the destination. Okay, so we have on one side of this, we've got Maduro, who is he's saying, look, I want my gold back from the West. I want it back in my country. Whereas Milei is sending his gold abroad. So now we don't know where the gold is going, but maybe it's going to the Bank of England. There's a good chance of that, right? Maybe it's going to something tied into Israel, like that he's very close with Israel, etc. So anyway, it's interesting to look at this dichotomy here. But it's also a good point, though, because if you look at the role that Elon Musk has played in this, right? And, Elon Musk, like you look at Milei and his very, very close ties to Musk, to Tucker Carlson, to, again, Ben Shapiro, Barry Weiss. It shows you, and again, I'm not damning him for it. I'm just pointing out that these connections show you the allegiance. Okay. Again, he's over in Israel. You see him doing these things that he's showing his allegiance to the Western-led order. And if you look at like Elon Musk as an example and the role that he's playing, I'll pull up another tweet actually here. Interesting point. This guy, Alex Rubenstein, says that Elon Musk had, out of his nearly 50,000 tweets, 0 about Venezuela prior to April. Now he's tweeting nonstop about the dictator. This guy says, what I said, Twitter is going full circle back to days of the Arab Spring as a tool for toppling governments. This is what I meant. I mean, and he has a point there, right? Because you look at it and you think, okay, it feels like, okay, yes, Twitter is this free and open. And look, I love Twitter. I love what Elon Musk has done with it. But I don't think for a second that Elon Musk isn't someone that is fighting at this level. He hasn't chosen which side he's going to be on, and he's helping to make sure his side wins. And I absolutely think that Elon Musk has aligned himself with the Western, led world order. I think that Donald Trump is being picked to lead in a lot of ways that order. Now, I'm not saying that they're going to make Trump the boss of the one world order. I'm not saying that, but I think that they're trying to use him as a tool. I actually think that Trump is just loyal to America. Right. I think that he's a nationalist. I think that he's against the New World Order. But the Western system has to survive for America to survive. So it's a very, really, really, really complex battle that is fighting out here. So if you look at all this together, to take a step back here as we're kind of rounding out this show, if you look at all this stuff that's happening, and you're trying to understand what's happening in Venezuela, like, to me, this is the best way to make sense of it. Is you look at Venezuela as being a key, kind of pawn on the chessboard that there's this tug of war over, and you can see that it makes sense. Now, as I mentioned earlier, if I had to say, okay, do I want to live in a world that's run by the Western cabal or the Eastern cabal, right, which is the BRICS? I mean, to be honest, I'd rather choose the Western cabal. Like, I know that there's absolutely there's corruption in America. There's a deep state here, and I think they have really bad intentions for us in the long term. But you look at China, right? And that's the thing, is if anyone thinks that, okay, BRICS is going to free us from the control of the deep state, look at the CCP. Look at what they're doing in their own country. Do you really think that they're gonna like suddenly gain control over this new world order, and they're gonna say, you know what, we want to give everyone freedom, and here's our gold-backed currency. We're all about fair trade and freedom. No, like, you look at the social credit system, you look at Huawei and the 5G network globally. And you look at, there's so much stuff. You look at the Belt and Road, the BNR, it's a Belt and Road Initiative. So if you look at what I told you about John Perkins and Economic Hitman, in his most recent book, I think it's the third edition, there's a whole, 3 chapters specifically on China and how the CCP has taken John Perkins' exact model, the Economic Hitman model, and they've basically created their Economic Hitman 2.0, which is the Belt and Road Initiative. And if you look at all the countries around the world that are part of the Belt and Road Initiative, you can see that there is a battle going on and that they're seizing control over these countries and taking them away from the Western system that has been in charge of them. So this is why I really think that in the grand scheme of things, that I'm on the side of we the people. Like, I really do. I really believe that there's these two, and I think it's much more complicated than this. I'm trying to simplify it a little bit to make it easier to discuss in such a short show. But basically, there's these two cabals that are fighting for control over the world. And you and I, we're just the cannon fodder. We're just the common people. They don't care about us, right? If you see Putin talking about the values of the West and the Satanism and whatnot, or if you see Xi Jinping saying something similar to that, it's not because they care about us, right? They want global dominance, and they see an opportunity. They see a weakened Western system, and they see an opportunity to come in with their system, which is why you see de-dollarization. I mean, this is why I think, again, China, Russia, this is the Sino-Soviet pact. It goes back decades. They're back together, right? But only it's not like the two communist blocs teaming up for global communism. It's being done in the idea of BRICS, right? The BRICS nations leading to create this multipolar world where there's fair trade, and it seems like that. But again, look at China. Look at that. They want to be in charge. And if you go back and I've got an earlier episode that I could probably, let me see if I can pull it up for you. Well, you can find it on your own. Anyway, I did an episode recently. Actually, no, I'm gonna show it to you. I'm gonna say you should really watch this. Let me pull up the episode for you. So, okay, this is my channel on Rumble. If you want to understand this, go back to and watch this episode right here. Okay. Leaked CCP speech reveals plan to kill 100 million Americans. This particular show right here will help you understand the CCP better than almost anything. And I've been studying the CCP for, probably I think since 2008 is when I really started this journey to start exposing communism in ways that I could. This is a leaked speech where this, from a CCP, he was the defense minister, and it outlines a plan of why China needs to kill between 100 and 200 million Americans so they can seize our farmland, basically, to feed their people. So this is my concern, right? And you talk about this, they literally talk about using biological race-specific, I'm not even kidding, race-specific biological weapons to target to white people so they can wipe us out of America, because they don't want to use nukes or heavy artillery because they can't destroy the land. So they want to use a race-specific biological weapon to wipe out most of the people in America, so it's easy for them to come in and colonize America, right? This is what's at the core of the BRICS, right? So don't buy into the illusions that the BRICS is trying to free the world from the New World Order. Go back, okay, at the center of the BRICS, the CCP, at the center of the CCP is a quest for global dominance, right? It's a communist nation. And of course, they've opened up to the West, and it's kind of capitalist in certain ways, but they're controlling everything there. Nothing happens in China without the control of the CCP. Like nothing. Even your Bible. Don't go to China with your regular Bible, right? You're gonna get arrested. They have this state-run Bible. And look, like folks, I've been to China. I've spent a lot of my life in Hong Kong and Taiwan and in small portions in China. I can tell you, it's a communist country through and through. It's not a place you want to mess with. So in this global battle, tug of war, you don't want the BRICS nations in control of the world. As corrupt as our own government is, and as much as people have been speaking out against like how evil the West is, and I get a lot in the comments where, I'll post something about the CCP and everyone's like, oh, the CCP, it's a red herring. It's just the Jews and the bankers. And I'm not saying that there's not some truth to that argument, okay? But the point that I'm making is that the CCP, especially with the BRICS nations, they absolutely have a goal of global control and global dominance. And you go back to things like that leaked speech and other things that have come out of there, they don't think too kindly of us Americans, us rednecks in America, us white people, the CCP, not the Chinese people, right? I know so many Chinese people. They're amazing people, right? They're absolutely incredible people. They've survived and they've lived under communism, and they're amazing. Some of the most amazing people I've ever met in my life, the Chinese people that have come out of China, especially the ones I've met that come out from the labor camps. Like some of my good friends are people that were literally in labor camps in China being tortured for their spiritual practice. And I'm not talking like torture, like sleep deprivation. I'm talking about people like strung up to the underside of a bed and shocked in the genitals with cattle prods. I'm talking about, tied to a tree in freezing weather, all kinds of negative, horrible things. So this is why I'm doing Man in America, right? It's to help you understand the war that's happening, but also to help us understand who the enemy is. And while our own government is absolutely corrupt and there's a lot of evil stuff in there, this is still America, right? I still own a bunch of guns. I still have, my own precious metals. I have freedom, right? And it doesn't feel very free these days, but the freedom that we have here in America it's a million times more than the freedom people have in communist China. And so we can't forget that, right? It's almost like you look at these modern women, these modern kind of liberal women that are saying, okay, women are so oppressed and because of the patriarchy, and look at them and say, look, you have no idea how good you have it, right? As a woman, especially a woman in America in the 21st century, like you have no idea how good you have it. And if you want to tear down the system and tear down the patriarchy and see what it's like to live, 200 years ago, go ahead, be my guest. You'll see what it's really like. But in the same way we look at those women and think like, how can you be so stupid? It's actually the same for us to be here in America. I think like our government's so corrupt. Of course I know that it is, but look around the world. Okay. Look at communist China. We have it so good in America. And there's a fight for our freedom right now, but we have so much to be thankful for. The fact that I'm sitting here in America broadcasting to you live like this, talking about these things. If I was in China, like 10 minutes in this broadcast, I'd have my door kicked down and you'd see them throw a black bag over my face and the feed would cut. That's the truth, right? But I'm here in America and I can do this. Companies like Rumble can exist here in America because there is protection of freedom of speech and there's innovation that we can do this stuff. So anyway, what an episode. I think I packed like 5 hours worth of information into a single show. So as we're wrapping up, a few reminders for you. One, make sure you press follow if you're watching on Rumble. If you're not watching on Rumble, make sure you are watching on Rumble or Twitter, the two places I'm most excited about. Two, make sure you enter to win the silver, right? I'm giving away 5 ounces every single Friday. Make sure you win. maninamerica.com/Seth. That's how you win. maninamerica.com/win. Sorry. maninamerica.com/win. And the link is in the description below. Just also a reminder of Noble Gold, right? Folks, de-dollarization is real. Don't wait until it's too late. If you've been thinking about it and you've been considering, maybe you should move a little bit of your IRA. Folks, look at the markets today. Look what happened today. Next week, I'm going to be doing a lot of financial coverage because I think that things are going to get really ugly in the markets. Like, honestly, folks, just take the leap. So goldwithseth.com, 626-654-1906. Noble Gold, they have my complete confidence in this company. They're a great company. I know the CEO very, very well. Good company. They're patriots. They're not going to rip you off. They're fair. Again, that's Noble Gold. So goldwithseth.com. Also, one other thing, I got to bring it up. If you don't have a stockpile of food, right? Like, folks, I don't want to be a doomsdayer, but I think things are going to be getting ugly here in America. Like, we're entering into, I think, what is probably the most tumultuous period in the history of our country. Honestly, like, it's like the Civil War was bad, and hopefully it doesn't get that bad, but gosh, folks, like, you can see if you watch today's show and you're paying attention with half your brain, you can see that, yeah, things could get extra spicy here in America. So one question I have you is, if tomorrow you could no longer go buy food for your family, say there's a power grid that, outage, CCP attacks the power grid, whatever it is, cyber attack or anything, what happens if you could no longer go buy food for your family? How long can you last, right? This is a very real question you should ask yourself, because there might be a time in the very near future where, say, for 3 months, you don't have access to grocery stores, right? You're going to be bartering with your neighbors, bartering with the local farmer. Honestly, right now is the time to make sure you're prepared. My advice is at least 3 to 6 months of food, at least 3 to 6 months for every individual in your family. I know it's expensive. You may have to pace yourself, but if you can afford it, do it, right? You'd rather be 10 years early than 1 day late. This food lasts for 25 years. So look, there's a lot of companies that sell you survival food. And if you're going, you say you're price shopping and saying, well, this one's cheapest per calorie. The thing is, they're giving you junk. They're putting Kool-Aid and pudding and stuff in there that you don't want in a survival situation. This is why, like, for me, Heaven's Harvest all the way. I know the owners, they're like amazing people, strong Christian patriots. Heavensharvest.com. You can get organic, you can get your food buckets, you can get everything, you get water filtration, you can get seeds for growing. This is like, if you can set aside some of your money for heavensharvest.com, you will not regret it, honestly. And if you use promo code Seth, that's Seth, you save 15%. So again, heavensharvest.com, promo code Seth, save 15%. All right, folks, what a show. Again, thank you for being here. If you're still here with me, please share the video. It's all I ask. If there's one thing you do, share the video. Also, let me know what you think in the comments. And when I say that, it's not lip service. I genuinely want to know what you think in the comments, because I learned so much from you. Look, I'm just a man in America, just like you're just men in America and you're women in America. We're all trying to figure out what's happening. And a lot of you, I can tell you, are very, very smart. You know a lot more than I do. And I learn a lot from you in the comments. So I love seeing, what do you think? Is this helpful? Did I miss something? Do you disagree with something? Does my hair look funny? Is my audio suck? The audio should be better, by the way. Let me know if it is, because we actually had a professional audio engineer come out. And one of the reasons why I only got 4 coins now here, right? I had 5 coins, is because as a tip, I gave the audio engineer a silver coin. I was, man, you rock. You did a great job. So if you like the audio, let me know, right? I love seeing your feedback. So, all right, folks, thank you. I've got some good interviews coming out soon. Like I said, next week, a lot of financial stuff. I just did an interview with Ivan Raiklin, the Deep State Marauder, which is publishing within the next couple of days. So make sure you're tuning in for that. And that's it. Thank you. God bless. Take care. I will see you next time. I love you all. Have a wonderful night and have a wonderful weekend. We have so much to be thankful for. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.